What's going on, my other warlocks? Today I just wanted to make a video about user interface, kind of some of the things that I do to set up my UI, what I feel like has been most effective for me, and I'll talk about some general concepts and principles that I use when I set all this up. So the first thing I'll talk about is clutter. I don't like clutter. I think having too many things on your screen really makes gameplay clunky. As far as that goes, I even turn off combat text. On that note, I do think that it's important to intuitively know how hard your spells are hitting. That's important when it comes to making decisions about what spells to cast on different mobs when they're at certain amounts of health, what the most efficient spell to cast on them will be based on how long they're going to live. That information, really is easily obtained through either damage meters or combat logs. The more you play, the more in touch with that you get. So my preference is to turn off combat text, and just every now and then, as my gear is going up, I just do a quick refresher and look at things like this just to get a feel for what those numbers are. Now, my primary add-on is TellMeWhen. The way I have this set up is towards the top, these are procs, they're buffs, they're different effects that I react to in the middle of a fight that affects my rotation. So, of course, first we have Bloodlust. This is just a simple Bloodlust timer. Whenever I'm Bloodlusted, it's what I watch to obviously track that duration. This is just a simple Potion of Prolonged Power. If you use Deadly Grace, you can easily just add that timer here as well. Now, these next few are a little more complicated, but not overly so. This is just Safus. I run Safus and actually quite a number of raid fights. I think, obviously we all know through looking at logs which fights those are. But also in Mythic Plus, this is probably one of my most important timers. And the way this works is, obviously I'm going to have my basic timer, which will only actually show when my Safus is equipped. So if I take off Safus, I know that it's equipped and it is off of ICD with the activation border. When I actually proc it, I go ahead and get a nice little timer that shows me how long it lasts, and then whenever it wears off, this next timer is the internal cooldown, just nice and red. Lets me know that I can't use it, and really easy to track when it's coming up again. It has improved my Safus uptime in Mythic Plus tremendously. I would highly recommend using something like that. It's a very, very effective way to increase your damage. ELT, this next one, Empowered Life Tap, is pretty much my go-to in Mythic Plus. Only shows whenever I'm talented into it, so if I turn it off, it's not there. For those of you that don't know, ELT is affected by Pandemic, so you can actually get this duration up to 25 seconds. The baseline is 20, or if you Pandemic it can go all the way up to 25. Whenever it is outside of that Pandemic range, it's that lightly transparent color. However, whenever we'll see here when it falls into that range, around 5 seconds, which is the more optimal time to refresh it, it lights up, which just lets me know that it's a good time to refresh it. And then of course if it falls off, pretty hard to miss, nice and red, knowing that I need to refresh that. The next one here, this is our force set. So that's one of the most important things for us to keep up, obviously, in our rotation. So just a nice timer to keep my force set. Same idea. It is, although not affected by Pandemic, I don't necessarily need to see in full color when it's at a high duration, so I just have it light up when it gets to about the cast time of UA, which is 2 seconds. So whenever it falls in that 2-second range, when if I'm trying to keep 100% uptime, I know that because it's lit up, that's about the time I should start casting my next UA so that it doesn't fall off. My next timers are going to be Norgannons. I just feel like it's a very powerful, obviously 16,000 intellect is quite a bit. So I like to know when that's up, especially with how our shard gen has been. It is really important if we have the shard count for it, to try to get out as many UAs as possible during those procs. This is just my Soul Harvest, obviously. That is always going to be fully colored whenever that's up. I like to really keep an eye on the duration of that. So the cooldown, I don't necessarily keep a timer for that, just because I think 2-minute cooldown is pretty easy to just watch on my action bar. So it's obviously macroed in with my racial since I'm an orc. They share the same cooldown. If you want to set up a timer for that, that's very easy. I don't, like I said, clutter is not my thing, so I try not to have any more things than I feel like I need. So now these next few bars these are just my basic dot timers. I use the same concept with pandemic on these. Whenever my dots are outside of that pandemic range, they're just very lightly transparent. However, when they start to fall into pandemic range, that's when they light up, and if they fall off completely, they turn red. So this third icon right there, that's obviously Siphon Life, because I am not talented into it currently. Excuse me, I have the hiccups here. It doesn't show, but when I talent into it, let's go ahead and take Siphon Life. Go ahead and get that timer. So the Unstable Affliction is always lit up. Obviously, there is no pandemic to it. I don't think there's any way to track multiple UAs through TellMeWhen. It's really just, I think, something that goes into the skill of playing this class, is just, you know, keeping an eye on your fatal echoes and how many are on your target at once. I'm sure there's probably other ways to do it. I don't find there'd be a whole lot of value, especially with how our shard count is right now, with always being pretty low. We don't generally have more than one UA on a target in a single target fight anyway. But just through the unit frames, it's not that hard to just look down and see how many UAs you have going. Now this smaller bar, this is my focus frame. So I just have a set focus macro keybound, just Control W there. So that's going to be identical in terms of how the timers work to my primary target timers, except just a little smaller and down bottom, so just easy to kind of see how you know, I keep dots up on 2 targets at once. Just a little bit of gameplay here to show you how this looks in an actual scenario. The dots only show when I'm in combat, and the timers and stack counts for my reap will always show, because I think, especially in Mythic Plus, it's important to know between pulls what your reap count is at. I also have my reap set up to change colors. It changes colors around 7 seconds, which I set that up back when my haste was really low. So 7 seconds was about how long my UAs were lasting at low gear levels. Not really that important to be super specific with it, but it's just so I don't cast too many UAs when my reap is starting to run out. If I see that it's that color, I just focus more on draining off my current UAs, and that's the reasoning for that. Aside from TellMeWhen, I don't really have too many other add-ons that I use. Just obviously details. LVUI is my interface, and this right here is just Wrath of Consumption and Phantom Singularity. So really self-explanatory on how those work. This big timer over here, which is actually just kind of a coincidence that I'm making this video this week, is for quaking. I don't have the texture set up, but whenever quaking goes out, it's the proper icon, and it's just so I know to stop casting, obviously. And other than that, I don't really have a whole lot more to go over. I guess I can turn on my LVUI anchors here, just in case anybody kind of wonders where I put things. Minimize my objective frame up here. That's just, you know, obviously your quests and everything. I like to keep that out of the way because I don't really think it's highly relevant to anything, honestly. You know, I have my cast bar right above my action bars. I know some people, and even in the default UI, have it underneath their player frame. I don't really think that's a good place to have it. That's just my preference. Target, focus frame here and here, and I keep my pet down here. So that is probably just about everything that I would want to go over. If anybody has any questions on how I set up certain timers, or if there's a timer you'd like to set up that you didn't see, or even if you just want, you know, to copy this whole UI, I'd be more than happy to share it or help you customize certain things about your own UI. Feel free to leave comments, and you know, just anything you want to know or need help with, I would be more than happy to help. So that about sums this up, and happy warlocking. Peace out.